They called me the black sheep of the family until I unveiled the truth with DNA evidence at his extravagant $50,000 birthday. Everyone's face turned pale immediately, but that wasn't even everything. I will tell you how it unfolded. Before then, we share stories like this every day. If you love them, don't forget to subscribe. We are on a journey to our first 1,000 subscribers. Thank you for subscribing. Kindly leave a comment telling us where you are watching from. We'd love to stay connected. Now let's get into the details of the story. I've spent most of my life in the shadow of my brother, the golden child everyone adored while I was quietly erased. At every family gathering, his accomplishments were heralded, his name spoken with pride. Meanwhile, I was the awkward afterthought, the failure no one mentioned except to compare unfavorably. My parents' cold looks and cutting words made it clear I wasn't part of their plan. Their love was reserved for him, leaving me to survive on scraps of attention and false pity. Tonight, as I stand outside the grand hall where his $50,000 birthday celebration unfolds, the rain taps against my jacket, mirroring the cold ache in my chest. This party isn't just an event, it's a symbol of everything I'm not. The endless luxury, the champagne fountains, the expensive suits. It's a world I was never meant to enter. I clutch the invitation in my hand, its embossed gold mocking me. They invited me out of obligation, not love. The family's silence has always spoken louder than their words. My father's dismissive glances when I ask about my future. My mother's quiet disappointment, her eyes full of unspoken blame. They never told me why I wasn't enough, but the message was clear. I'm the disgrace. My brother's success is their pride. I am their shame. It's a weight I carry daily, dragging me deeper into the margins of their lives. I became invisible by their design. Growing up, I tried to fit their mold, chasing their expectations. I worked harder, studied longer, hoping for a sliver of approval. But every achievement was met with indifference or a pointed comparison to my brother. Why can't you be more like him? They'd say, as if I were a mistake to be corrected. Their words bruised more than they hurt because they weren't just criticisms, they were rejections. The family I longed for was a fortress I couldn't breach. In the quiet of my small apartment, I replay the scenes of my childhood, birthday parties where I was a guest, not the son. Holidays spent watching my brother receive gifts I never got. Each memory cuts deeper, carving a space for anger and resentment to grow. But I hide it well. I've learned to wear my silence like armor. They think my quiet acceptance is weakness, but inside, a storm is building. Tonight, that storm is ready to break free. I watch through rain-streaked windows as limousine after limousine arrives at the venue. Well-dressed guests step out, laughing and congratulating my brother like he's royalty. The man they toast to is flawless in their eyes, flawless in the light of their applause. But I know the cracks beneath his polished surface. I know the lies they tell themselves to justify their favoritism. The perfect image is just a mask, and tonight, I plan to tear it off. This party, with its expensive decorations and flawless guests, represents everything I've been denied: wealth, respect, family. It's a monument to my erasure. But instead of breaking me, it steals my resolve. They think I'm broken, a lost cause. That's their mistake. The black sheep isn't here to beg or apologize. I'm here to remind them I exist, and I'm done being ignored. This is the first act in my reckoning. I've spent years gathering pieces of evidence to confront the family's lies. What they don't know is that this party will be the stage for the truth they've buried. My brother's inheritance, his status, it's all built on deception. Tonight, I carry proof in my pocket. Proof that will unravel the perfect story they've told about blood and loyalty. They'll see that the line between family and fraud is thinner than they ever dared admit. I remember the countless times I begged for fairness, for recognition. Each plea was met with cold shoulders and harsher words. I was the problem child, the embarrassment at family dinners. Their rejection became my fuel. I stopped asking for love and started demanding respect. Not through words, but through actions. Tonight, those actions will speak louder than any argument. Tonight, I claim the dignity they refused to give me. The rain intensifies, matching the pulse pounding in my chest. I can almost hear their laughter inside the hall, the clinking glasses, the hollow cheers. I don't envy them anymore. Their fortune is a cage, their applause an echo chamber of lies. I've seen the truth behind their smiles, the betrayals, the silence, the favoritism. And now, I'm ready to shatter their illusions. They won't see it coming. But when the truth hits, the fall will be devastating. As I step away from the window, the weight of my plan settles like a cold stone in my stomach. Fear mingles with anticipation. I'm walking into a room full of people who have tried to erase me, who have stolen my identity and replaced it with shame. But I'm no longer afraid. This night isn't about forgiveness or reconciliation. It's about justice, the kind that comes from unmasking lies and reclaiming what's rightfully mine. For years, I believed silence was my only shield, but silence also became my weapon. I've waited patiently, gathering strength, waiting for the moment when I could strike. The invitation to this party was the key I needed to step into the light. I won't waste this chance. I'm done being the forgotten son, the family's disgrace. Tonight, I rise not as a victim, but as a man ready to rewrite the story. The black sheep has found his voice. I glance once more at the invitation, then at the reflection in the window. The face staring back is no longer the scared boy who begged for acceptance. It's the face of someone who has endured, who has fought in silence, and who will no longer be denied. The scars remain, but they are now badges of survival. My family thinks they've won. They think I'll leave this night broken and defeated. But I'm here to prove them wrong. The rain begins to lighten, droplets falling softly on the pavement. A quiet calm settles over me, replacing the storm of emotions. I grab my coat and head for the door. The path ahead is uncertain, filled with risks and possible ruin. But standing still was never an option. I step into the night with a single vow. I will no longer be invisible. Tonight, I am the reckoning. Tonight, the family's perfect facade will crack, and I will be the one who breaks it. The truth doesn't shout. It hides in shadows, whispered rumors, and guarded secrets. For years, I sensed something was wrong, something no one dared say aloud. My brother's life, his inheritance, the family's pride, it all felt too perfect, too carefully constructed. Doubt crept in quietly at first, a small seed in the back of my mind. But doubt is a dangerous thing. Once planted, it grows until it consumes you. I knew I had to find the truth, no matter the cost. It started with old medical records, documents I obtained through careful connections and late-night research. The family guarded these like treasures, but nothing stays hidden forever. I found discrepancies, dates that didn't align, signatures that seemed forged. My heart pounded as I pieced together fragments that didn't fit the narrative I'd been fed all my life. Every contradiction fueled my suspicion. This wasn't just about inheritance, it was about betrayal at the deepest level. Ordering the DNA test was the hardest decision I ever made. I knew the risks, the fallout if anyone discovered my plan. But I couldn't live under the shadow of doubt any longer. I sent the sample anonymously, careful to cover every trace. The waiting was agonizing. Each day I told myself to stay patient, but my mind raced with every possible outcome. The truth could free me or destroy me. Still, I held on to hope. It was the only thing left to grasp. The lab was my secret ally, a place where science could strip away lies. When the results came back, my hands trembled. The numbers and codes on the paper told a story my family refused to acknowledge. My brother and I. Our DNA didn't match as it should. The man everyone celebrated as my blood was not. The implications hit me like a thunderclap. Years of neglect, betrayal, and shame were rooted in a lie they built to hide the truth. I didn't rush to confront them. The truth needed a stage worthy of its weight. I began gathering more evidence, discreet conversations, hidden financial records, anything that could support what the DNA test revealed. I tapped into old family lawyers, aunts who spoke too freely after one too many drinks, and even distant relatives with grudges of their own. Piece by piece, I constructed a silent arsenal. This was no longer just personal, it was a reckoning waiting to happen. Every secret uncovered was a step closer to justice. I learned about backroom deals, inheritance plans shifted quietly to protect appearances. The family's perfect story was unraveling under my fingertips. They had hidden the truth to keep up appearances. Appearance was everything to them. But appearances are fragile. They crack under pressure, and I was ready to apply that pressure, slowly, methodically, until their house of cards collapsed. While I built my case, I kept my distance. The family saw only the silent shadow I chose to be. I watched their celebrations from afar, smiled politely when forced into conversation, and hid the storm growing inside. No one suspected the quiet man with the haunted eyes was preparing the biggest surprise they'd ever face. I learned to be patient, to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Revenge is a game of timing, and mine was almost perfect. The deeper I dug, the more dangerous it became. Some relatives noticed my questions, subtle inquiries that didn't fit the mold of a passive black sheep. I had to tread carefully, trust no one fully. The truth was powerful but vulnerable. One wrong move, and everything could come crashing down. Still, I was driven by something beyond fear. The desire for acknowledgement, for justice. Not just for me, but for the truth that deserved to be heard. At times, the weight of secrecy felt unbearable. Carrying this knowledge alone isolated me further from the family I'd longed to belong to. But isolation was a small price to pay. Their rejection had already cost me more than I could count. Now, I had something no one else did. A weapon forged from truth and patience. This weapon was my lifeline, my ticket out of the shadows. The family's perfect narrative was crumbling, and I was the architect of its downfall. Late at night, in the solitude of my apartment, I would review the evidence again and again. The faces of my parents and brother haunted me. How long had they known? How long had they hidden behind lies to protect their image? The anger that burned inside was matched only by my resolve. I wasn't just seeking revenge. I was reclaiming my identity, exposing the fractures in a family built on deception. This was my story now, and it would be told. As the day of the birthday party approached, the tension tightened like a noose. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would reveal the truth in front of everyone. This was no impulsive act of anger. It was a calculated strike. My voice had been silenced too long. Tonight, it would ring loud and clear. The family's secrets would no longer be safe behind their smiles and champagne glasses. Tonight, their perfect world would face its reckoning. With evidence in hand and nerves steeled, I prepared to enter the lion's den. The man they celebrated was not who they thought he was. Their golden sun was a fabrication, a mask-hiding betrayal. And I, the black sheep, held the key to shatter it all. Walking toward the party, I felt the weight of years lifting, replaced by cold clarity. I wasn't just confronting my family. I was confronting the lies that shaped me. And I was ready to win. The envelope came in gold, thick, embossed, with a seal like a royal decree. My brother's name glimmered in elegant script above the words, "You're invited." It was addressed to me, hand-delivered, as though someone actually expected my presence. I turned it over in my fingers, studying the irony. After years of exclusion, scorn, and polite dismissals, I was finally invited back. Because appearances demanded it. Because it looked good for the black sheep to show up and clap for the golden boy. But this time, I wasn't coming to applaud. The card was a display of wealth masquerading as affection. It detailed a rooftop venue overlooking the skyline, an open bar, a live jazz quartet flown in from New Orleans. Every word screamed extravagance. $50,000 spent to polish an already gleaming image. They didn't realize that this would be the costliest party of all. As I set the invitation down, I felt something settle inside me. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't angry. I was ready. Finally, I had something louder than their money, the truth. For days, I rehearsed, not in front of a mirror, but in silence. On walks. In the shower. Staring at the ceiling in the dark. I recited what I would say when the moment arrived. The opening line had to land like a blade, the evidence timed like a theatrical beat. I had one chance to strike, and it had to be clean. There would be no screaming, no drama, just facts, cold, undeniable, and shattering. That's what they'd never understand. The quiet ones carry the sharpest knives. I picked out my outfit with care, a tailored navy suit, pressed white shirt, polished shoes. Nothing loud, but nothing forgettable either. I would arrive as a man of intention, not desperation. I wouldn't drink. I wouldn't laugh. I would observe until the perfect moment. Because this wasn't a social call. This was a reckoning, dressed in civility. Let them mistake me for the same quiet disappointment I've always been. That was the disguise I wore for years. Tonight, I would let it fall away. Each day leading to the party tightened something in my chest. Not anxiety, clarity. My entire life had been bent around their narratives, their choices, their lies. I was shaped by absence, raised by omission. But now, I had the power to rewrite the story. And not just for myself, for everyone who had ever been dismissed, undervalued, or disbelieved. I wasn't just reclaiming my name. I was setting fire to the pedestal they'd placed him on. He wasn't royalty. He was a fraud in a suit. A part of me wondered if they suspected anything. My sudden acceptance of the invitation. My lack of questions. But they never saw me as a threat. That was their mistake. Their arrogance was my camouflage. They thought I'd show up, nod politely, fade into the background. That I'd be grateful just to be invited. It never occurred to them that I might have my own reasons. They had forgotten that silence often means preparation. That still water doesn't mean calm, it means deep. I kept the evidence in my inside pocket, sealed in a simple folder. DNA test results. Scanned birth records. A tight statement, short and devastating. Every piece vetted and cross-referenced. I had backup copies in my car, in the cloud, even mailed to myself. There would be no denial this time. No rewriting history. When I spoke, it would be final. The party would not end in applause. It would end in silence, the kind that comes after a bomb drops. On the night before the event, I sat alone in my apartment, holding the folder. I stared at it, thinking of my childhood. The times I sat at the table while praise was heaped onto him. The way my father never looked me in the eye. The quiet meals, the missed birthdays, the gifts I never received. I thought of my mother, always too busy to notice me. I wasn't just forgotten. I was erased. But this time, they would see me, and they would never forget. The morning of the party arrived gray and drizzly. I watched the sky as I dressed, half hoping for thunder. It felt fitting. I drove in silence, classical music humming low in the background. The city buzzed as if nothing was about to change. But I knew better. I parked a block away and walked slowly, savoring the stillness. My shoes echoed against the wet concrete. Each step was deliberate, rehearsed. I had waited my entire life for this walk. As I entered the building, the doorman gave a nod, barely glancing at my name. I was on the list. Of course I was. The prodigal disappointment, returning for one night only. The elevator ride was smooth, quiet. I watched the numbers rise. At the top, the doors slid open to laughter, music, and clinking glasses. The rooftop sparkled with lights and forced charm. I stepped into their world like a ghost returning to haunt the living. No one noticed me yet. I didn't approach anyone at first. I stood near the edge, drink in hand, eyes scanning. There he was, my brother, laughing in a circle of admirers. My parents, nearby, radiant with pride. They looked younger than I remembered. Or maybe just smugger. My pulse was steady. My hands didn't shake. I watched him speak, his hands animated, his smile wide. I knew what was coming. I would wait for the speech. For the moment they'd hand him the mic, toast his success, glorify his bloodline. That would be my cue. The ballroom pulsed with a kind of artificial joy. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light. Laughter sparkled like champagne, and money hung in the air like perfume. Servers in black tuxedos floated by with silver trays. Everyone smiled too brightly, laughed too loudly. But beneath it all, I felt the tension thin, like a cracked veneer. No one else noticed. That was fine. They were drunk on pretense. I was sober on purpose. I wasn't here to celebrate. I was here to end the performance. My brother stood at the center like a star in his orbit. Dressed in an ivory tuxedo, drink in hand, arms outstretched to soak in praise. He looked untouchable, gilded, born for admiration. Friends slapped his back. My father beamed with a pride that had never been meant for me. My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue, pretending they were tears of joy, not guilt. The scene was so perfect it was brittle. All it needed was pressure. And I had exactly that. I kept to the sidelines, watching, waiting. A waiter offered me a glass of wine. I declined. I needed clarity. My coat remained buttoned, the folder pressed against my chest like armor. The evening unfolded like a movie I'd already watched 100 times. Toasts, laughter, the warm glow of a life curated for applause. They'd written this scene, cast every part, except mine. But I had rewritten the ending. All I had to do was walk into the spotlight and read my lines. Then came the cue. The tapping of a spoon on glass, the dimming of lights, the attention shifting to the stage. My brother adjusted his cufflinks and made his way forward, smug and polished. My father took the mic first, his voice thick with pride. To my son, my legacy. A man who's always made this family proud. The crowd erupted in cheers. My mother wiped another tear. Then he handed the mic to my brother, who accepted it with mock humility and a knowing grin. I stepped forward. I didn't rush. I didn't clear my throat. I simply walked onto the stage as the room slowly noticed me. Confusion flickered across faces. My father's brow furrowed. My mother's smile collapsed. My brother froze, unsure whether to smirk or panic. I took the mic, gently, and turned to the crowd. Sorry to interrupt, I began. But I think it's time we honored the truth, not just the image. The room went still. I unbuttoned my coat. I took out the folder. I know most of you don't know me well, I said. You've seen me at holidays. Heard my name mumbled when someone asked where I'd been. I'm the other son, the one who didn't quite fit the family mold. But I've been paying attention, and what I've found changes everything. I opened the folder. Slowly, deliberately. This is a DNA test. A legally verified, court-accepted test. It confirms, unequivocally, that my brother and I do not share the same father. Gasps. A ripple of disbelief. Then silence. I looked at my father. His face went gray. My mother's hand covered her mouth. Which means, I continued, he is not your biological son. And all this, every inheritance plan, every favor, every dollar, was built on a lie. A lie you raised, funded, and adored while pushing your real son to the edge. I didn't yell. I didn't tremble. I just stood there, letting the truth cut through the air like ice. My brother looked like he'd been slapped with glass. The crowd didn't know what to do. Some looked away. Some looked at me with new eyes. My father opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came. My mother finally whispered, "Please, not here." I turned to her. "Why not? You lived the lie here. You celebrated it here. Let's be honest here, too." I held up the documents. I sent these to 2 independent labs. Both confirmed it. He's not your heir. He never was. And then I stepped back. No applause. No laughter. Just the sound of a legacy unraveling. My father turned to my mother. "Is this true?" His voice shook off. Not with anger, but with something worse. Fear. She didn't answer. Couldn't. The room was a vacuum now. The weight of truth had pulled all air from it. My brother stepped forward, voice raised. "This is ridiculous. He's just bitter, jealous. Look at him." I smiled. "Projection doesn't suit you anymore." I turned to the crowd. "You called me the black sheep." Maybe I was. But I was also the only one who saw the cracks. The MC tried to resume the music, but no one danced. The mood had broken beyond repair. People stared at their drinks or checked their phones. Some whispered. Some quietly slipped away. My father finally found his voice. "You had no right." I looked him in the eye, unflinching. "You had no right to raise me in silence while feeding a stranger your legacy." I handed him the folder. "This is yours now. You can keep pretending, or you can face it. But I'm done." I walked off the stage to a room that didn't know what to do with me. Not pity. Not applause. Just stunned recognition. My mother called after me. I didn't turn. My brother stood frozen, still holding his empty glass. The lights felt colder now. The birthday boy had no words. I had taken them all. Outside, the night air was sharp and clear. The door shut behind me with a soft, final click. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. They had finally seen me. Silence has a strange sound when it follows chaos. Not peace, never peace, but a heavy, ringing quiet. The kind that lingers in a room after a scream. I didn't need to look back at the ballroom to know what was happening. Voices hushed into frantic whispers, alliances breaking like snap strings. My brother's empire, built on praise and pretense, was cracking beneath his feet. The guests didn't know where to stand anymore. The golden boy had lost his shine. And I? I was already gone. I walked through the hotel's lobby, coat still buttoned, the air oddly warm against my skin. My heart wasn't racing. It beat steady, measured. Not with triumph, but with release. I had carried the weight of their lies for so long, it felt unfamiliar to walk upright. The burden wasn't mine anymore. I hadn't just told the truth. I had survived it. There's a difference. Telling the truth is an act. Surviving it, That's war. And I'd come out the other side. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city glistened, streets wet and glowing beneath lamplight. My reflection followed beside me in the glass as I passed storefronts, calm, unsmiling, but whole. The years of dismissal, the hollow birthdays, the scraped-together rent checks, the empty chairs at family dinners, they all drifted behind me now like smoke. My past had burned down in that ballroom, and in the ashes, I found something I'd never had with them: control. They couldn't erase me anymore. I was undeniable. I thought of my father, his stunned silence, the fear in his eyes. It was never about love with him, only lineage, control, pride. My mother, quietly complicit for decades, finally faced the rot she'd allowed to fester. And my brother, he would spin it, try to regain the narrative. But this was one mask he couldn't polish. His brand, his life, his identity, it was all built on the idea that he belonged. And now that idea had been shattered in front of everyone. But this wasn't just his fall. This was my rise. I didn't walk back to some limo. There was no entourage. Just me and the truth I had carried like a torch. My phone buzzed voicemails from unknown numbers, texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. I ignored them, let them process. I wasn't interested in their confusion or their backpedaling affection. I didn't burn my life down to rebuild bridges. I burned it down because I refused to keep living in their shadow. They needed to feel the fire I'd felt my entire life. I reached my apartment. Small, quiet, mine. I poured a glass of water and sat by the window. From this high up, the city looked calm. But I knew better. Behind every lit window was a family, and behind every family, stories. Truths buried, masks worn. Theirs wasn't the only lie, but it was the one I could no longer live under. Tonight, I hadn't just revealed DNA. I'd shown them who I really was. The son they discarded, the man they couldn't destroy. In the days that followed, the fallout spread fast. My brother's company faced questions. His sponsorships paused. Reporters circled like vultures. Rumors flew, because that's what people do when perfection breaks. My parents went quiet. No press statements. Just shame. I heard from a cousin that my father hadn't shown up to a board meeting, that my mother hadn't left the house. And my brother? He posted a vague message about family trials and weathering storms. But even his followers sensed something deeper. Still, none of it brought joy, just clarity. Revenge isn't satisfaction. It's acknowledgement. A mirror held the people who swore you were invisible. And sometimes, that's enough. I didn't want their apology, I wanted the silence to end. I wanted to stop second-guessing the pain they caused. Now, I could. Now, the ache had a name, a face, a story. I had written the final chapter in a book they thought they owned. They always told me I wasn't strong enough. But I had been holding back the tide they feared most, truth. Weeks passed. I got letters. Some handwritten. Some groveling. Some furious. My mother sent a card with no return address. Inside, just one line: "You were never a mistake." I didn't reply, because the truth was I wasn't. And she'd always known that. She'd just never stood for me when it mattered. That's the thing about silence. It's a form of consent. And I'd lived in hers for too long. Now, she could live in mine. I started walking more. Taking time. Cooking. Reading books I'd never had time for. I even booked a trip. Not to escape, but to begin. To build something not in reaction to pain, but in pursuit of peace. My world wasn't big yet, but it was mine. And for the first time, that was enough. I didn't need their mansion, their legacy, their name. I had forged my own. One born not of inheritance but of integrity, of battle-earned truth. I sometimes wondered what they told themselves now. If they rewrote the narrative in their minds, painted me as cruel or ungrateful, it didn't matter. I hadn't done this to punish them. I'd done it to free myself. And freedom was never clean. It's jagged and loud and filled with losses. But I had won something they'd never understand. I had won myself. Looking out over the city one night, I smiled. Not wide, not for anyone, just a private curve of the lips. The storm had passed. The wreckage was behind me. Ahead was only the road I chose to walk. And I was no longer walking alone in the dark. I was walking in the truth. If this story gripped you, make sure to subscribe for more powerful tales of quiet revenge and long overdue justice. Every day, We uncover the stories they hoped would stay buried. Stay tuned. See you soon in our next story.